haven't decided.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Yes, as you've seen, that's El-Rufai, the governor of Kaduna State. His Excellency joins us this morning on Sunrise Daily. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
Well. What a season, what a time they were in. Yes, we know electioneering, campaigning going on at the moment, but the business of governance still has to go on while all of that is. Yes. But now you're counting down.
Yes, so 100 and
almost
16 days to go, I think.
There you go.
Yes. So I count down every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're looking forward to?
I am. Well, I'm looking forward to handing over the burden to someone else. And
burden?
Yeah, it's a burden. It's a burden. Trust me. And try to get my life back, spend more time with my family. I have young children. They need my time. And I have a PhD to complete. I've been on a PhD program for a few years now. I need to focus on it and get it out of it.
We've outsiders thought that has been settled, that maybe afterwards, because the APC presidential candidate said, well, you have to stay here and work with him when that happens.
Yes, that's...
What's going to happen to that?
That's what he wants. We are still talking. We are still talking. Of course, you know, Asiwaju is the candidate of our party. We'll do whatever we can, not only to get him elected, but also to make him succeed. But I still believe that when Asiwaju tells me what he wants me to do in his government, I'll be able to recommend much younger, more energetic people that can do as well a job as I can do, or even better, because, you know, our experiment in Kaduna has shown that if you empower young people and, you know, give them the political backing, they can deliver incredible results. We've proved that in Kaduna. So I do not think there is any job in the government that we cannot get a younger person. But as I said, you know, we're still talking with Asiwaju, and Nigeria is the only country whose passport I have, and whatever I can do to make sure that our country is better, I will do it. But I'm just saying I will always present options.
Okay. We'll still talk about that in a moment, but let's look a little broader about your stewardship.
Yes.
Since you're counting down. There was a mindset. I mean, the mindset that you must have had a certain mindset while vying for that position, the first time out, then your first term, second term. But if you're on a broader look, what kind of emotions are you dealing with now, having seen how you have performed over the years, and then how they may refer to you when you then hand over?
Frankly, Chamberlain, I don't think about that a lot. At this point in time, what I am concerned with and trying to get my team to focus is to tidy up and complete some of the things we've started, and try to correct some of our mistakes, you know, and also having seen so much in the last 7.5 years, we'll try to put in place frameworks and legislation that will ensure that the next governor doesn't spend the next 2 years, you know, finding out what we have found out in 7 years. Luckily for us in Kaduna State, my successor, I hope, from our party, was someone that has been in our government from the beginning. So he's fully informed about our policy direction and so on. But still, there are a few things that we learned even within the last 1 year that we discovered either we didn't quite get it right, or, yeah, we totally ignored this problem. So we're trying to put those things in place. So it's a very busy time for us. You know, in fact, we've decided in the State Executive Council to hold our weekly meetings almost every Monday until after the elections. Then we start a handover process, because there is so much to do. I don't think much about what we have achieved or what we did not, and what people will think of our administration. We will leave that to posterity and history. All I know is that we did the best that we can, and we worked flat out in the last 7.5 years. And I do hope that what we've been able to do in many aspects of governance in the state will be sustained. But that's all. But that's all you can do. You can only do what you can do and move on and leave it to history and your successors.
When you talk about things that you're just finding out, do you want to give an example?
One of the things we just found out was there was a lot going on in certain key ministries that we didn't realize. For instance, we buy books, we buy laboratory equipment, we buy, these are things that you need to buy every year. We found that in previous years, we have bought those books on paper, but they are not delivered to the schools. The stores people in the Ministry of Education just have an arrangement to do the paperwork to make it appear as if these books have been delivered, but they are not, as well as medical equipment. How we found this out was the Speaker of our State House of Assembly got one of his companies to bid for this. And when he bid and won and tried to deliver, the first problem he had was that he found out that the prices were higher than what he could do because, exchange rate changes, and so these are imported stuff. And he was told, no, don't worry, these things are never delivered. The Speaker of the House.
Whoa.
They are never delivered. Let's just sign this, you'll be paid, you'll take care of us, and so on. And he came to me and said, I don't understand this. I didn't come to you for this contract. We got a company that we knew they did this. So, discovering that after 5 years is quite a shock. And this is how governance is. There are many things that are buried deep that you just don't know because you're sitting at the top, and many things are happening at the bottom. So, I'm just giving one example that is transactional, but there are also policy issues that, we found that we have to do something about. There are things like that we are trying very much to, get going. For instance, one of the decisions we've taken is that our governorship candidate will now start attending executive council meetings. He will sit in all our council meetings in attendance so that he gets to know, everything that we are discussing. He sat in the first 4 years, but he's been absent in the last 4 years because he's been in the Senate. Senate doesn't sit on Monday, so I've asked him to be attending executive council so that some of these things he will see himself and,
That's an unfair advantage, you don't think? Because if you're asking candidates to do that, then don't you think that a candidate of the opposition too should be asked to sit in? If this is really about continuing a legacy and ensuring that, they know what the people
I have no responsibility to the candidate of the opposition. My responsibility is to my party and the overall interest of the state. And I believe that it is in the interest of the state.
As a governor, it's different.
Pardon?
But as a governor, you do.
Yeah. I said my responsibility is to my party and the overall interest of the state. And my assessment is that the overall interest of the state will be best served if our party is re-elected. These opposition parties spent 16 years, doing unbelievable things that we've spent the last 8 years trying to deconstruct. And even when they were campaigning, they were still threatening they would bring back the bad teachers that we fired. They will bring back the 390 district heads that we thought place an unnecessary burden on the finances of local government. They have not learned anything. What value are they going to get sitting in the council? Our political and governance ideologies are miles apart.
If for any reason, because some people will say that oftentimes politics is more emotional than rational. If at the end of the day, if for some reason, they are elected, but there's a handover period, would you consider then having them in the council meeting?
Yeah, if another party is elected, I will invite not only the governor-elect, but also the state chairman of that party to sit in an executive council so that we have a seamless transition. The interest of the state prevails. But, this is how we look at things. And
that challenge that you discovered, because that happens as you said, in several other policies and several other governments in different states.
Yes.
What would you recommend as a solution to that?
Look, the solution to it is very early in the game of governance, you know, really be hands-on. Don't assume, because, you know, many of us went to school when these things worked. Don't assume that they work like you used to. And this is why it's important to have younger people who are closer to how the world works now than some of us that went to school in the 60s and 70s and think that, you know, students get textbooks. Every year, you know, beginning of the year, academic year, we get textbooks, we get pencils, we get this. These things are not done anymore. So you see them on the budget line, you propose to the State Assembly, is appropriated, but the schools don't have those things. And the headmasters can't speak because it is their bosses at the headquarters that do these funny things. So you have to be really hands-on. You have to pay surprise visits to schools, for instance, and say, look, do you have books? Do you have chalk? Do you have this? Oh, you pay surprise visits to hospitals and primary health centers and ask whether the equipment that you proposed in last year's budget and has been contracted and supposedly delivered is actually in the hospitals and primary health centers. You'll be very surprised what's going on. It took us several years before we figured out because, you know, my presumption always, personally, is that you are innocent unless proven guilty. You are good unless you show you are bad. So when you have that view about human nature, a lot can go wrong under your watch, and you are hardly ever aware.
I'm just a little, I mean, right now as you're speaking, my mind traveled to an instance where I have seen where, you know, things have been provided for a hospital, and those the materials are only used when they hear that, you know, there is a government is coming,
absolutely.
or a senior person is coming, you know. So they also...
You have to just get into your car. Don't even tell your protocol and security people where you're going. Just get into your car and say, follow me. And you drive to the place. Unless you do that, and then you'll discover many things, and then you can take steps to try to remedy them. Because, look, the system is broken. The public service system is totally broken. And only works in isolated islands of performance. It's really worrying, and it's one of the things that, you know, tell some of us that, look, maybe your time is up.
Okay, so I always find it very interesting. You're in your 60s, and you always talk about how, and this is not the first time, every time we've come to CAD Invest in Kaduna, you always talk about how you want young people. The Ibrahim Kashim Fellowship, which you started, was also in light of that. So it would seem that you've really put your money where your mouth is with regards to having young people. I'm surprised that the governorship candidate that has emerged from your party, though, at least for your state, because some people will say one would have thought that maybe you would have endorsed somebody much younger in that stead. I mean, do you want
But he's young. He's young.
He's younger than yourself?
Much younger.
Much younger.
He's like more than 10 years younger.
Okay, so
he's more than 10 years younger, and frankly, we tried to bring up several young people. We looked at 3 or 4 people that we were looking at. We didn't want any of my successors to be older than early 40s, mid 40s. But at the end of the day, the person that we narrowed on and the deputy governor were the best when we polled. We polled 4 times. We did a survey across the state. I didn't wake up in the morning and just pick someone. We had 4 different polls to test the acceptability of the various aspirants, okay? And 2 of them continued to be the top 2. And the others, including other younger people that we groomed, just didn't show up as well as they should. There are others that were outsiders, I would say, people that were running federal government agencies, or, you know, that I consider outsiders because they don't know the change in policy direction that we pursued in the last 4 years. So my goal was to ensure that we have our successor from amongst our original APC Kaduna team of 2014.
So you do consider...
In the end, we ended up with 1.
you do consider that age is a big factor in leadership, and that, you know, maybe Nigerians have not been making this hue and cry over the age of the presidential candidate of your party for nothing. How does that work for you? I mean, in terms of looking at the age of the presidential candidate vis-a-vis your own, you know, advocacy that, you know, for leadership, especially looking at where Nigeria is and looking at the amount of work that needs to be done, somebody younger should be there.
Yeah, look, instinctively, I would prefer to see younger people at levels of leadership, okay? But, you know, and we've tried to do that in Kaduna. We brought in young people, and they have performed wonderfully. A few have disappointed, as is normal. We brought in women. They have done very well. A few have disappointed, it's normal. Now, at the national level, I would have preferred a younger person, but the reality of Nigeria is that that younger person must also have varied experience that will enable him hold the country together. It's a complex society. It requires experience. It requires a track record of performance that maybe a 50-year-old cannot have, cannot convince either the political class or even the general public that he has. So I consider the septuagenarians that are running for office now as transitional leaders, okay? My hope is that whoever is the next president of Nigeria, and I can say if Asiwaju, or when Asiwaju wins, because I'm confident he will win, you will see a large collection of young people in the administration, because I think Asiwaju sees his role as that of a transitional leader. You know, fix some of the problems that we have, but build a new leadership class. That is the only way, because it is very difficult for a 40-year-old or 50-year-old to convince Nigerians, or even those of us in the political system, that he has the experience to manage this country. It's a complex country. And some of the people running, frankly, you know, are a joke as far as I'm concerned. People, you know, every job looks easy from a distance. But I have had the privilege of working with at least 3 presidents very closely. And I have seen the demands of that office and what it is. And people just don't know. Even being governor is tough, but people don't know. They think it's easy. People can always sit and criticize, oh, he should have done this, done that. Get them to do that, then the Ngbati starts.
Like many are saying on Twitter already, but let's give the moment. Let's go to Lagos. We've got our colleagues. They've got questions for you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Good morning, Your Excellency. You know, it's very concerning what you raised, you know, the example of the public service system that you talked about earlier. I mean, it only points to the validity, well, if someone would look at it from that perspective, of the corruption perception index that we chatted about when this program started. You know, so there are those who wonder if that is the problem. At the end of the day, everyone calls the name of the president. However, there are people, just like you have experienced, who are not making the jobs of the governors or the president to show the way it should show. So the corruption perception index only gets worse as a result of that. And you said the other time that the system is broken. What then do we need to do? Because we can't just fold our arms, can we?
No, we can't. No, we can't. I agree with you completely. Look, a country makes progress if it has visionary and strong political leaders. But that alone will not lead to progress unless you also have a functional public service, okay? So it doesn't matter how good a president is. If the public service is broken, the president cannot succeed. The same with the governor. So, you know, I think one of the major priorities for any administration is to look at the structure of the public service and undertake a huge surgical operation on it to make it lean, mean, effective, and competent. Right now, the federal bureaucracy is over-bloated. There are over 800 ministries, departments, and agencies. The Oronsaye report that recommended the merger of institutions has not been implemented. In fact, since then, more have been added. There is no political will to face this issue. We spend 60% of our budget, 60–70%, on recurrent expenditure, most of which is consumed by the bureaucracy, either the salaries and overheads of running the government and their pensions. That is not the way to develop. We must, slim down the government, and ensure that the best and brightest go into public service. The public service should not be a dumping ground of the sons and daughters of those that are connected, sons and daughters of the elite. Because right now, going into the public service is no longer based on competitive examinations and so on, where you pick the best and brightest. You pick the worst and the connected.
So then,
and that has to change.
My apologies,
the public
Your Excellency.
service itself needs to be looked at, and surgically, the size, the quality, everything, training programs, the age, position, when you are of a certain age and you have not got to a certain level, you should be exited. The military already does that. We should do something like that in the public service.
Is that the plan? Okay.
In addition to getting a good president, we must create for ourselves a sound public service. We don't have one now. Well, it is part of the reason why corruption is so blatant and widespread.
I guess we'll get to that, later on the program. But for Kaduna State, and from that discovery you made, and I think Chamberlain asked you something along that line the other time, what then needs to be done? Because you've discovered it, just as you said, in just one instance, and there are several others like that. Is there a machinery being put in place in Kaduna State to discover such occurrences and mitigate them? Perhaps some kind of undercover work, among the ministries, departments, and agencies in the state, so that the next government can have something to work with and be able to give better governance to the people.
Yes, we have a whistleblower law that we enacted in Kaduna State. We even have a witness protection program just to facilitate this. And there are many other things that we discovered early enough and corrected because of the whistleblower law that enables people to submit anonymous petitions of wrongdoing anywhere in the government. According to the public service rules operational in Nigeria, an anonymous petition should not be entertained. This is crazy. We in Kaduna State, we passed a law that says whether a petition is signed by a person or anonymous, we'll investigate it. And because of that, we found many cases of wrongdoing that we've corrected, that we have disciplined the people, we've dismissed many people, we are prosecuting many people. We also passed an anti-corruption law in the state, created an anti-corruption office in the office of the Attorney General. We didn't create another agency like EFCC. We don't need it. We just think a unit in the Attorney General's office can look at cases like that, and they have done extremely well in tracking cases of corruption and dealing with them. This is why I believe that if you now do a corruption perception index that is subnational in nature, all right, go state by state and measure the corruption perception, you will find that in Kaduna State, the corruption perception is much lower than most states because we've taken certain measures. We have made examples of people in the public service. We have sacked those that have been found to be fiddling with public funds. We are prosecuting them. We've not convicted anybody because the judicial system is just pathetic, it's too slow, and it is, in my view, often on the side of the crooks rather than on the side of the government or the innocent. One of the biggest mistakes I think this country made was creating this National Industrial Court, which sees its duty as taking sides with the employee against the employer. It is not always the employer that is wrong, but the National Industrial Court always, 99% of the time, rules against the employer and in favor of criminals, which the judicial system also is slow to punish. There are people that we sacked from a Kaduna State Water Corporation in 2016. because they embezzle counterpart funding of a multilateral development project. We got a judgment from National Industrial Court last week that one of the thieves should be reinstated because he was not giving a written query. He got a verbal query. They did not advert their minds to the fact that the man, embezzled millions of naira. That's not their concern. Their concern was he didn't get a written query. He got a verbal query according to public service rules, blah, 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 blah. So there is that problem, and it's systemic. And unless we stand as a country and say that this has to change, I'm sorry, Nigeria will just be struggling forever and ever, will be a country of potential permanently.
Morning, Your Excellency. I'll also like to talk about public service, but with a more futuristic outlook, if we have time. But let's yet again, zero in on Kaduna State. Either it's Birnin Gwari or other parts of Kaduna, we get reports from our correspondent of insecurity every now and then, kidnappings and attacks and all of that. I know you have said time again that there is little that a governor can do under the structures that we currently have, that security always stops at the buck of the president's table, But then again, Nigerians will say the governor is the chief security officer of the state. So to what extent would you take responsibility for some of these reports that we get from Kaduna State?
Look, I am the governor of the state, and people elected me to ensure that their lives and properties are safe and secure. So to that extent, I take responsibility and I do the best I can. But I must repeat, for the avoidance of any doubt, that I don't control the police, I don't control the armed forces, I don't control the security agencies. What we do as state governors is provide the logistics and the support and supplement what they get from the federal government. For instance, when I came into office in 2015, we found that the last time the police command in Kaduna got overhead was September of the previous year, September of 2014. They were not paid any overhead. So we've had to be running the police. The police, you go to a DPO, he doesn't have paper to even write complaints. So we've had to provide money from the state resources to cover that. Does the federal government budget for that? Yes, it does. Does the money get to the divisions and the commands? They don't. Is it my problem? Is it my responsibility? No. But as governor, I have to make sure that these police stations run. We build police stations. We provide vehicles for them. We provide vehicles, 200 and something vehicles to security agencies twice in 2015 when we came into office, and then in 2018 again, and we are planning to do so again before we leave office, because these vehicles are used and they don't last as long as they should. So we provide the logistics. We have a network of informants. We pay them money to give us information. We provide the information to the action agencies. But if I say that there is a bandit here, I am sure there is a bandit camp here, and the military doesn't go in, or the Air Force doesn't bomb the camp, or the police doesn't go in, what can I do? I can't come out and say, the federal government is not doing what it should do. But really, this is the problem. We are chief security officers in name, but we have no control over the coercive forces or giving them orders to do what they have to do. They have to get clearance from Abuja. That's why the buck stops at the president's desk. And when the president now gave them a deadline and say, get rid of these people, we saw massive improvement. In the last 3-4 months, there has been incredible improvement everywhere in the state. Birnin Gwari, Chukun have almost been cleared of banditry. We still have cases once in a while, but not what it used to be. Kachia, Kajuru, Giwa are the 3 local governments now that we are having issues. But the military, the police, the Air Force are there. And to be fair to them, in the last 3-4 months, they have been doing an excellent job. But that was only because the president said, you have to end this before the end of December. The president didn't say that 2 years ago. It would perhaps been a different story completely. So yes, we feel bad, we feel responsible, but our hands are tied to a certain extent.
We hope that, that is resolved as much as possible, and it's a conversation that continues, particularly for those, positioning to take your office as you exit. Still on Kaduna, Your Excellency, we've, had cause to interact with you, particularly during CAD Invest, and we can refer to, some of the investments that your administration has attracted to the state. Or lamb rice is one of them, and your partnerships with Google. To that effect, there are reports that you've been able to increase the internally generated revenue of Kaduna State to the region of about 50 billion naira or thereabout, and
more than that. More than that.
And there are reports quoting the worth of your investment to the tune of 2.8 billion naira. But you started off on a note of reflection. If we tie that to, Kaduna's debt profile as you exit office, which is to the tune of $580 billion or so to speak, how much of an asset, the financial increases that you've recorded to Kaduna's debt profile?
Yeah, well, look, the investments of attracted in the last 7 years actually total about $4.3 billion. It's much more than 2.8. And the results are clear. Our focus is bring in investors, create jobs, private sector jobs, good paying jobs for our young people. And I think in that area, we have achieved our objectives and put the state on the right path, in spite of all the challenges of insecurity. Now, when we came into office, Kaduna State was the second most indebted state in the country. As far as foreign debt is concerned, it was 200 and close to $300 million. In our time, we increased that by another between $350 and $500 million. We had to borrow because we took office when the country and the world are going through challenges of recession, and the only way we can develop the infrastructure that we need to support our investments, the only way we can improve our schools and health system so that our people will be educated and healthy and be productive members of society, is to borrow. But we borrowed long term from the World Bank. We borrowed at very low rates of interest, and we invested in the infrastructure needed to attract these investors. That's why they keep coming, in spite of the headlines and the concerns about security. And anyone that visits Kaduna, the capital of the state, or visits Zaria and Kafanchan, the three metropolitan centers of the state, where more than 60% of the population live, will see the results of our investment. And we believe that we have put the state on the right path to attract more investors. There is now an ongoing real estate boom in Kaduna. There are people that are relocating from Abuja to Kaduna to live there and work in Abuja by taking the train every morning. So, we believe that we have put the state on the right path. We didn't borrow to consume. We didn't borrow to pay salaries. We didn't borrow to run the government. We use our internally generated revenue, our VAT revenues from the Federation account, and these loans to develop the state. And the development is very clear. You can see it in every sector, from education to health to infrastructure. And I think we are putting the state on a sound footing for the future.
Well, Your Excellency, there was something you said, recently, which I'd like to quote to you, and I hope we'll be able to put it on the screen for you to see as well. You said, "We spent 300 billion naira per annum to subsidize electricity, which we hardly get. We are subsidizing 50% of electricity supply. We have exchange rate of 400 naira to a dollar, but if you want to buy dollar across the road," you mentioned the name of a location in Kaduna, "it costs 700 naira. Some people would buy at 400 and sell at 700 naira, costing us about 4 trillion naira per annum." And you on and on you went. So how do we cut this down? This happened.
And subsidy cost us about 6 trillion.
Okay. Well, I mean that. No.
Fuel subsidy.
Yes, and subsidies cost us
fuel
about 6 billion. Exactly. So, but all of this happened, just as you said, under the APC government. So why then? What is it that's made this happen, and why then should Nigerians trust the APC government for another 4 years?
Well, look, what you are seeing happening, whether it is fuel subsidy, electricity subsidy, or foreign exchange subsidy, these subsidies have been with us from time immemorial. The PDP government also had that problem, okay? It's just that we don't talk about what they have done. So it's a problem. And the problem is not the APC government. I think the problem is Nigerians who are not willing to face the truth. You know? What is the truth about petroleum, about fuel? We have queues now. People are paying between 300 naira per liter, in actual fact, up to 500 naira per liter in parts of the country. And they have to queue for hours to get it. Why? Because of this unsustainable and broken down subsidy regime that we have chosen to maintain for the past 50 years. It has not worked. It is not an APC problem. It is a Nigerian problem, because today, if President Buhari says remove subsidy, the NLC will be out on the street protesting. We've had that under Obasanjo's administration. We've had that 3 or 4 times, anytime the price was slightly increased. So it's a Nigerian problem. We need a national conversation to tell each other the truth. How can we subsidize fuel, petrol, by 6 trillion in a year when our national education budget, national, I mean federal plus all the states, is not up to 2 trillion? When our national health budget, federal plus all the states, I'm talking recurrent and capital now, is not up to 2 trillion. Which country spends 3 times subsidizing petrol, 3 times what it spends on infrastructure, more than 3 times what it spends on education, on health? It's a choice we have to make as a people. It's not about APC or anything. And the fact that this fuel subsidy is not sustainable is the reason why all the presidential candidates, none of them has said, I will not remove fuel subsidy. So what are we waiting for? But already the price is 300 to 500. Yeah, but, okay? It's a national conversation, not a partisan one.
Okay, because I was going to some of the members, or some of those Nigerians, the key ones, are in your party. We do remember at that time they were up in arms saying, don't remove your subsidy.
Yes. And some of the Nigerians that were in previous government were also there and supporting it. So I'm saying, you see, what I'm saying is that it is a national conversation. It's not a partisan one. And I think we are getting there because we're in campaign season. Atiku Abubakar has said, I will remove fuel subsidy. Peter Obi has said, I will remove fuel subsidy. Asiwaju Bola Tinubu has said, I will remove fuel subsidy.
But will when they get there?
They will. They have to. The country will be bankrupt if they don't. Already the states are distressed because this 6 trillion that you're subsidizing is half of the money is supposed to go to state governments and local government. That doesn't go. This is why most states are already building up salary arrears. Most states are struggling. Those of us that have higher IGR are surviving, but many states that have very low IGR hardly pay salaries now, and the arrears are building up. So the next government must remove it, otherwise the country will simply collapse. It will be Sri Lanka.
One thing you said in the opening, which is why I just remember now the lighter note, many politicians say you're too frank for their liking. Because when you say you discovered that ill in the States and you wanted to correct it, and then it turns out, wait a minute, is the Speaker supposed to be setting up a company to be bidding for contracts in the States?
Yes, the Speaker,
does the law allow them to
members of the legislature, okay, are allowed to have their own businesses.
But as somebody who is in government, who is a Speaker,
but he is not
tantamount to conflict of interest.
He's not in the executive.
He's a key person.
He's not in the executive. He doesn't sit when we take decisions to award contracts or anything. In fact, as I told you, he didn't even tell me or told anyone that he was bidding for the job. He asked a company in which he's a shareholder to bid for it. And of course, when they had this problem, they came to him. Okay.
All right. Now, your party, I mean, yes, you want your party to win the elections.
Yes.
But I know you must have heard several times the indices, how they say when the president came in May, at that time, fuel price was 87 naira per liter. He jacked it up 66.7% to about 145 naira per liter. And today, it's way over, who knows, in different places, 3, 4, 5. Some even are telling me yesterday they bought 650 per litre at the moment.
I'm not surprised.
And then he also did say he was going to generate 10,000 megawatts of distributable power in the next 3 years during the first term in office. Several other indices like that. And these have not materialized. So Nigerians keep wondering, okay, fine, let's not look at the person, but let's look at the promises from our present reality. They don't see why they should stick with the APC.
Well, I'll tell you why they should stick with the APC. And I'm not going to say the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, because we are not devils, okay? They should stick with the APC because they should look at what we've been able to achieve in the last 8 years in very difficult circumstances. Chamberlain, there has never been any national government in Nigeria's history that has faced the challenges that the Buhari administration has faced. Okay? When we came into office, the price of oil collapsed to $26 a barrel. Okay? That was when we thought, and we, you know, I'm one of those that led the governors, we convinced the president this is an opportunity to deregulate this subsidy thing. Just allow the market, because the price was so low that it was almost what we were selling. Okay? So that was when it was moved up to that price. And the whole idea was that the government will hands off. As the price moves up slightly, you increase the pump price slightly. But who sabotaged it? The NNPC. The NNPC made an announcement and linked it to the president as if it was the president that fixed the price.
But the president is the minister.
No, he is the minister, but look, the minister of Agri doesn't fix the price of gari or rice, which is more important to our lives than food.
But the buck stops at the president's table.
No, the buck may stop at the president's table, but he doesn't decide the price of the biscuit you eat. There are some things that the government does. There are some things that you allow the market to do. What we wanted to convince the president in 2016, when you had that increase in price, was for the government to hands off this subsidy so that we'll get out of it for the first time. All right? But it was sabotaged. Again, we went and complained, but you know, no action was taken. Now, secondly, the country went into recession because of that. COVID came in, COVID-19, lockdown for 1.5 to 2 years, nothing got done. Okay? So there, and immediately after we got out of COVID, the Russia-Ukraine war disrupted supply chains, raised the cost of shipping, raised the cost of food. This is happening all over the world. It's not unique to Nigeria. This administration faced many challenges that I want to say the previous administrations did not. In the 60 years of PDP rule, oil price averaged $70, $80 a barrel. There was a time it went up to $140 a barrel.
Yeah, but even in the places where we ought to have been benefiting, we did not benefit. So, for instance, the Russia-Ukraine war saw oil prices going up.
Yes.
Nigeria is an exporter of crude oil. We should have benefited from that. But as a result of our ineptitude in protecting our pipelines in the south of the country, you know, Nigeria was not able to benefit from that.
That is part of the problem. But the main problem why we did not benefit is because of fuel subsidy. The subsidy takes every revenue that we earn from the sale of crude oil and more. That's the main reason. Vandalism is one thing. It reduces our oil production by a percentage, so we are not even meeting our OPEC quota. I agree with you. But if we had just sold the 1.3, 1.4 million barrels per day and got the money into the treasury instead of spending it on subsidy, Nigeria would have been better off. And as I said, this subsidy issue requires a national conversation and national consensus. It is not a partisan thing. It has been going on for years. We tried to solve it under the Buhari administration. We were sabotaged, and now we are where we are.
No, the Buhari administration could have had that conversation. It refused to have that conversation. And people will ask, you know, why should we trust a leadership of a party?
To be quite honest, we've had the conversation at the level of the National Economic Council, chaired by the Vice President. We all agreed it should go. It was Buhari himself. He took a decision that this subsidy will hurt the poor, and I won't do it. Okay? So it is not about not having a national conversation. Everyone agreed, but the president took that decision. And that is why our presidential candidate in the same party, can say, I will remove it. Okay, so it is not a party position. It is the personal decision of the president, and he's the president.
Okay. There was one conversation I remember you had. I think you chaired that committee as well, on your party's decision about restructuring.
Restructuring, yeah.
What happened to the report?
We submitted the report. The president agreed with it. Action is supposed to be taken. Some bills have even been drafted and sent to the National Assembly, but it has not gotten the traction that it has. Again, this is another thing that all the presidential candidates have agreed that it should be adopted and implemented. So and it will solve many of our problems.
In this government? Didn't the president agree with it?
I honestly don't know. I have not, for the past 3-4 years, I have stopped trying to understand how the federal government works. Okay? I just focused on trying to make my state work because that's my primary responsibility. There are some things that we agree with the president, and he says this will get done, and it doesn't get done. And those that refuse to get it done don't get punished.
So there are big questions when you say that. I mean, because right now people are wondering what is happening with your party's presidential campaign council. It doesn't appear that everybody is on the same page, singing from the same hymn sheet. So, for instance, if you have a president who is saying, I don't want to remove subsidy because it's going to hurt
the president is not on the ballot. The president has his tenure up to 29th May. He may not want to remove subsidy, but our party, if you look at our manifesto, we never promised that we're going to keep petroleum subsidy. We never did. Our party never promised that we'll redesign the currency. It's not in our manifesto.
Well,
you need to separate, okay, the personal decisions of some people in the villa from the manifesto of the party. It's important to understand that.
Is there a division? Because the people in the villa, some people will argue that they're part of your party.
No, most of them are not. That's what is interesting. Most of them are not.
Is there a division between those around the president and those within your party right now, which is affecting your party's presidential campaign council?
I believe there is. I believe that there are elements in the villa that want us to lose the elections because they didn't get their way. They had their candidate. Their candidate didn't win the primaries. And I think they are still trying to get us to lose the elections. And they are hiding behind the president's desire to do what he thinks is right. I'll give 2 examples. This petroleum subsidy, okay, which is costing the country trillions of naira, was something that we all agreed will be removed. In fact, I had a discussion with the president and showed him why it had to go, because how can you have a capital budget of 200 billion for federal roads and then spend 2 trillion on subsidy? This was a conversation I had with the president in 2021 when the subsidy thing started rising. He was convinced. We left. It changed. Everyone in the government agreed. It changed, okay? Secondly, the second example I will give is this currency redesign. You have to understand the president. People are blaming the governor of the central bank for currency redesign. No. You have to go back and look at the president's first outing as president. He did this. Buhari Idiagbon regime changed our currency and did it in secrecy with a view to catching those that are stashing away illicit funds. It's a very good intention, very clean intention. The president's heart is white, okay? But doing it at this time, within the time allotted, just doesn't make any political, economic, or sense. And for such a program to work, okay, we have to be involved as governors, as subnationals. Because, look, in my state, there are 2 local governments without banks. In Borno State, out of 27 local governments, only 2 have banks. In Yobe State, out of 17 local governments, only 2 have banks. So how do you expect farmers in every part. And remember, Borno State is 4 times the size of the 5 southeast states. So how do you expect everyone to change his currency within the time limit? Look, there are some things
So knowing the example, and given the example that you've given, what then are the chances of your candidate in the presidential elections?
Look, the people of Nigeria should understand that these are not the policies of the APC, they are not the policies of our candidate, they are the policies of fifth columnists that want to bring us down. They want to bring this country down. Because, look here, the governors met a few days ago and sent a delegation to meet with the governor of the central bank on this matter. We've never been really involved in this. We said, look, we are the people that listen to the cries of those below. I went to Cubao and Ikara for campaign last week. And after the campaign, after the rally, the Farmers Association came to me. They said, look, we thank you for all your good policies in agriculture. Buhari has helped in anchor borrowers and this and that. And we thank you particularly for bringing Olam that takes up all our grains that we produce. But why are you trying to make us poor overnight? There is only one bank branch in Cubao local government. Cubao local government is larger than Anambra State. One local government. There is one bank branch. And these are farmers that have millions of naira of their hard-earned money. These are not politicians in Abuja that have stashed billions. These are farmers that have millions of naira. It's their hard-earned money. And they want to change it. And they have to travel 100 kilometers to the nearest bank branch. And on their way, there is a chance that bandits will even seize their money. How can that be done in a few months? It can't. So we went to the governor of the central bank. I said, look, extend this thing. And let's work together. Okay? The governors with security agencies, we provide vehicles to the banks and central bank. We go town to town, village to village, market to market, and say, come and change your money. We support the idea of redesign. We know that there are people with stashes of cash. We also want that mopped up, okay? But we should not in the process make ordinary people suffer or ignite the anger of voters against our party as if it is our party's policy. It is not. All right. It is the policy of a few people. Well, and it's probably either not well thought through or intentionally designed to crash the political process. Because what happens if tomorrow people start protesting because they don't have cash, they can't transact? People are trading by barter because many that have deposited their cash cannot get the new currency. All right, Excellency, we need to go at this point, and perhaps we will try to get one more bite at the cherry before you hand over. It's over 100 days, so there's still a lot of time for us to have one more interview with you before that time. So there is 117 days. So there you go. 116 days.
You've really been counting down.
Yeah. I want to get out. I want to rest.